Hello and welcome to Thursday of Monsoon Awareness Week, and we've been having a great week of discussions. We've been talking about lightning. We were talking about flash flooding on Monday. Lightning was Tuesday. Yesterday was downburst winds, but today we're going to be talking about dust storms and the challenges that dust storms present to the Southwest during the monsoon season. We've got a full crew here to join us in talking about the safety issues related to monsoon, how you can protect you and your family during these dust storms. We're going to go over what you should do in your home, what you should do if you're driving around and you encounter one of these dust storms. So I'm really excited with the people that we have on the call today. Thank you for joining us at home and watching us on YouTube or on Google+. Real quickly, running down the line here, we've got Tony Merriman, who's the WCM up at the Flagstaff, Arizona office. Tony, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Tim?
Doing good. I've got Paul Enriquez. He is the science officer, all scientific-y over at the Phoenix office. How are you, Paul?
Doing just fine tonight.
Very good. Also at the National Weather Service office in El Paso is John Fawcett. He's the warning coordination meteorologist.
How are you doing?
Good, good. We got James and, is it Leticia?
Larissa.
Larissa Johnson. See, that's what I get for trying to remember. They're out in the San Diego office. And finally, I got Doug Pacey. He's a spokesman for ADOT, and he's going to talk about some of the work that Arizona Department of Transportation has been doing with these dust storms. Also joining me, again, you can see my name there on the lower third. I'm Tim Bryce. I'm a forecaster here at the Weather Service office in El Paso. Joining me is our aviation focal point here in El Paso, Lance Tripoli. Say hello.
Hello. How you doing?
Okay, so real quickly for anyone out there watching us on the live feed, if you have a question about dust storms or Monsoon Awareness Week, feel free to tweet us at using the hashtag Monsoon 2016. I'll keep it on my lower third there. Feel free to give us a tweet and let us know if you have any questions related to dust storms. But as we get into this, real quickly, I'm going to turn things over to Mr. Paul, and he's going to talk about how these how thunderstorms, and we talked, right, Paul? We talked a lot yesterday about the downburst winds, and one of the things we did talk about is dust storms and how these downburst winds can form these dust storms. So I wanted you to kind of quickly go back over that and tell everyone how that occurs.
Right. It's the downburst winds from the thunderstorms, and then we get the strong outflow from that. And if I can properly share my screen here, I can show a radar image of how that kind of looks. So for us meteorologists, we understand this, but this is looking at our radar, which is in the southeast part of Phoenix. And typically when our dust storms develop, we get these strong thunderstorms that develop between Phoenix and Tucson. And the outflow winds develop from these storms. So you get the thunderstorm collapses, the winds hit the ground, they rush out. And you can see that if you look at that thin, bluish kind of green line as it races from the southeast to the northwest, that's the leading edge of a big outflow that's moving towards the Phoenix area. As that happens, it kicks up a lot of dust, picks it up, and we get a pretty gnarly looking storm. This is a picture that I took that night. I guess some people might call this the haboob from hell. It got international attention when this happened for some reason. I mean, it was a big one, but we've had some big ones before. I remember doing interviews with BBC about this dust storm that we had. So, but it's impressive, the wall of dust, it's 5,000–6,000 feet high. It's moving in at about 40 miles an hour. When it comes in, you can't see more than 100 or 200 feet, and it can cause problems for our people at the airport. It impacts air travel, but it also impacts the ground transportation, which might be a good segue to our ADOT person.
Very true. So Doug, you guys in Arizona, and to a lesser degree here in southern New Mexico, we have challenges with communicating and getting the word out when these dust storms are imminent or about to happen. What are some of the challenges, first of all, that ADOT has is detecting these dust storms? And then how are you guys kind of being innovative in the way that you're trying to alert drivers?
I guess I'll back up maybe one step. So we know what's going on when the dust is coming. You know, we're in touch with the Phoenix and the Tucson Weather Service folks. You guys, we have you know, our own maintenance crews out along the highways. DPS, the Arizona's version of a highway patrol. We're always in communication with those folks from our traffic operations center in Phoenix, so we kind of know what's happening. But once we know that there's blowing dust or a dust storm or something happening that's affecting driving and highways, the way we get the information out, we'll use social media, primarily Twitter. We'll post updates to Facebook too, but primarily Twitter. But the easiest way and the best way for us to get information out to drivers on the roads is our overhead highway signs. We call them dynamic message signs. That's where you see the ones, especially between Tucson and Phoenix and down in southern Arizona. It'll say blowing dust, warning, or it'll say the highway's closed. If that's the case, if the highway's closed, and we've added a few of those near Paso Peak and Eloy. You guys would be the experts on why they happen to pop up there more than other places, but those are definitely some hot spots for where we get blowing dust activity. So we're happy to get some of those overhead signboards in areas that definitely need it.
Now, real quickly, because I know you gotta run before we you won't make it for the full hour, but so I want to ask all my ADOT questions to you.
Yep.
One of the things can you kind of address the 511 system that you have for dust information?
Yeah, the 511, it's a traveler information hotline. Most states in the country have a 511. If you're in Arizona and you dial 511, you will get I think there's 7 or 8 menu items you can choose from. One will be roadway information, another will be airports, parks, tourism. But if there's a blowing dust event, a dust storm, a haboob going on, that'll be the first thing you hear about. Someone in our traffic operations center, a PIO, a public information officer, if there's a blowing dust event that's affecting travel on a highway in Arizona, they'll record a message and that'll be the first thing you hear. I know they do that. I've recorded more than a few of them the past few summers. It gets really busy when these things happen. I know you guys get busy, we get busy. I think we're both doing our jobs, and then we're also, you know, working with media so they can get the information and get more information out to the public too.
And that's what it comes down to, is getting the information out to the public. I think later on we'll give some examples. We'll show some videos of what it's like to drive through a dust storm. We'll go over well, if you could kind of go over the awareness campaign that ADOT has come up with Pull Aside and Stay Alive, and go over kind of the outreach that you do and the education that you've done with the community.
Yeah, Pull Aside, Stay Alive. Well, the Arizona Department of Transportation, they've been talking about dust storm safety for years and decades. But Pull Aside, Stay Alive, it's something we started in 2012. And the goal is to kind of raise awareness about the dangers of driving in a dust storm. I think if you've been in one on the road at least once, you probably know that that's not something you want to do again. I drove into one once before I moved to Arizona, before I worked for the Department of Transportation. It was actually near Paso Peak and Eloy on I-10. I was visiting my parents in Tucson, and I don't know, I could see maybe a few hundred feet in front of my car, and it probably lasted less than a minute, but you know, I white-knuckled the whole way through, and when I was through it, I realized I don't ever want to do that again. And so that kind of illustrates for me the importance of getting the information out. One, don't drive into a dust storm. It's easy to avoid, you know, the massive 4,000-foot-high haboob that's off in the distance. But you guys know there's other things. There's dust channels, and then there's just blowing dust that swirls around. If you're caught in a dust storm, you know, you want to get off the highway. If there's not an exit to get off, we want you to get onto the shoulder, and then off the shoulder as safe as possible and as far as possible. And once you're there, your car is stopped, you know, turn your lights off. And some people wonder, why do you turn your lights off? I want to have my lights on so no one hits me. Well, you want to turn your lights off so you don't get hit. People may be inclined, if they see lights off in the distance, to follow those lights. And if your car is stopped and parked, you could get rear-ended, and that could be bad for you. So get off the road, pull aside, stay alive, turn your lights off. wait out the storm, and then continue on your way. But obviously the number one thing, don't drive into blowing dust, because the visibility can drop in an instant. And, you know, you probably got an example. You can just go to YouTube and look at dust storm and see people drive into them, and it's just as dark as night in some of them.
I just, I don't know if you could tell, but I just did one of your promo videos of the dust storm that ADOT put together. Real quickly, can you, you guys have a website that you'd like to promote?
Actually, pullasidestayalive.com. It's got a few of the PSAs we put together. It's got those tips I just quickly ran through, and that's pretty much it. It's pretty basic. You know, we don't want to weigh you down with a whole bunch of things to do when you see a dust storm. Just the main thing is don't drive into them. But if you get caught in one, like a dust channel or something whips up on the side of the road and you didn't have a chance to be the smart driver and avoid it, you know, those are the tips to follow to be as safe as you can be.
And one of the other outreach things that I found kind of fun and interesting, and I don't know how much you'll be able to address this, but you guys did a Haboob haiku contest.
Yeah, they did the Haboob haiku in 2012. I can't take any credit for it. They did that, you know, before I got there. But it was the year they launched their Pull Aside Stay Alive campaign, and it went over really, really well. They got media coverage, international media coverage. I know the New York Times did a story about it, AP and Reuters, international news. It was pretty great. And, I don't remember some of them, but it really created, brought more awareness to the issue of, you know, pull aside, stay alive, and the dust storm driving tips.
I thought that was a great idea. You know, anything with alliteration always works well, and I thought that was just a great way to kind of reach out to the community and get the community involved. And, you know, if there's any decision makers out watching today, you know, one of the important things is education and getting the word out ahead of time about what dust storms are, what the potential are, and some of the problems that we can have associated, and then the safety tips. Now, one more thing before we let you go for the evening, Doug. We, you know, part of the social media campaign for monsoon awareness is that we would tweet and Facebook post the safety tips for dust storm awareness. And as soon as I posted, you know, the safety tips for staying alive and pulling aside and staying alive, and then you pull aside, put on your brake, put on your parking brake, and turn off your lights. I had a woman who said, well, in the Midwest during fog, you know, they say turn on your lights so that you can be seen. So, and I know you just mentioned it, but could you hit that again? Why is it important when you pull aside that you turn off your lights?
Well, if you're off the shoulder, or you're on the shoulder, you're pulled off the road, we want you to turn off your lights. I guess first, you know, put your emergency brake on. Take your foot off the brake. You don't want your brake lights to show up. Any dome lights in your car, keep those off. Because you're off the highway, you don't want anyone to hit you. And every other drivers are driving blind. They can't see where they're going. You can't see what's in front of you. If they see a light in the distance, they may be inclined to think, that's the way out.
Right.
That's where I can go, and that's safe. And you don't know how fast they're going. They could be going full speed. They could be going, you know, maybe 10, 20, 30 miles an hour. But your car's stopped. If they hit you, that's a bad situation. I mean, there's no safe place to be in the middle of a dust storm on a highway or near a road. It's a bad spot to be. But if you're caught in there, you want to be off as far as you can, and you want to kind of stay hidden, and keeping your lights off will help you do that.
Very good, and that's a great answer. I think that's counterintuitive for what some people grew up with.
And, you know, of the tips, that's always the most common question. Why do I do this? But that's the answer.
Very good, and it makes perfect sense. Well, I know you got to get off to dinner. It's your anniversary, right?
It is 8 years today.
Well, congratulations, congratulations, and have a good dinner with your wife. And we really appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I know we'll be in contact with the Phoenix and Tucson folks quite a bit over the next few months.
Very good. All right. Hey, have a good evening.
Thanks, guys.
You betcha. Hey, real quickly, John, can you talk about they're trying to figure out, or they were in the works of putting together a dust storm warning. Where does that stand as far as, I guess it's like a convective dust storm warning, because we can put out dust storm warnings now, but it doesn't work well with the kind of dust storms that we get in New Mexico and Arizona.
Well, the last I heard, and Ken Waters at the Phoenix office, who's not able to join us now, but he's really been spearheading this, trying to get this product issued from. It's up at the national level, and they've kind of lumped it in with snow squalls off the Great Lakes because they don't have sufficient warnings for those type of weather phenomena. So. That's the last I heard, and you know how things don't move along quickly, so we're hopeful that a convective dust storm warning, whatever they're going to call it, will be in place next year, next season, because, as you know, the current dust storm warnings cover too large an area for too long time. They warn too many people. Need something that's more like a severe thunderstorm warning, and you say, well, just use severe thunderstorm warning. Well, that confuses folks coming from other parts of the country expecting, oh, big hail and things like that. And so that's where we're at this point as far as I know.
And so I'm going to reiterate, I'm going to kind of describe, because all the weather offices right now, we can issue a dust storm warning. But for technical reasons, it's on a very is it zone-based or county-based?
Zone-based, I think.
So it's zone-based. So, okay, I just couldn't remember off the top of my head. But so people understand that covers a very, you can't just narrow it down to where the dust is. So when you put out right now, whenever a Weather Service office issues a dust storm warning, it can cover a very large area, like John was saying. And as an example, I know that 2 years ago, we had a report of very dense dust blowing across U.S., I believe it was U.S. 70 between Alamogordo and Las Cruces. So it's right on the county line between these two counties of Otero County and Doña Ana County. So we put out a dust storm warning. It was for the dust itself was very small, but those counties, the zones that they encompassed a very large area of southern New Mexico, and it also included the towns of Alamogordo and Las Cruces. And I believe, is it still true that the wireless emergency alerts still includes dust storm warnings?
Yes.
Yes,
So,
and it's also county-based. So
right.
I know that's an issue we have here, is that with like our county being so big, we may issue a dust storm warning for southwest part of Maricopa County where Gila Bend is. And if we do that 70 miles to the north, where you have 4.5 million people sitting, they are all going to get alerted that there's a dust storm warning and that dust storm's not coming for them. But then if we determine that the dust storm, in fact, is coming for them, and so we expand the dust storm warning to include the zone that most of Phoenix is in, they will get another alert in their phone. So that's kind of something I don't like when I'm trying to make this decision of warn or no warn, because do I want to notify millions of people on their phone that there's a dust storm coming? It kind of adds another dimension to that decision process.
Yeah, we had the same problem for the towns of Las Cruces and Alamogordo. There was no chance at all that the dust was going to get there, but the way the system was set up, everyone in those towns who had smartphones at that time, they all got a message on their phones. So like you said, it does, the WEA alerts are great when you can narrow it down for like the tornado warnings or the flash flood warnings, but the way it's set up right now with dust storm warnings, it definitely makes it challenging, for sure.
I would add there's another dimension to that you guys probably don't deal with as much, but because of the technical limitations like you're talking about, the way that we get the message out for dust storm warning is also the same vehicle that we use to get our excessive heat warnings out. So very frequently we will be in a period of excessive heat, and then we start to get some thunderstorms. So we have to basically be issuing another heat warning and the dust storm warning at the same time. So it becomes a very convoluted process, and something that, when we issue the flash flood warnings or severe thunderstorm warnings or tornado warnings, that decision process from when we decide this is a life-threatening situation and we want to warn people to when that actually goes out for our proficient meteorologists, that's about 45 seconds. For a dust storm warning, especially if we have a heat warning in place, it may take 3, 4, 5 minutes for us to get that out the door, and that's not acceptable for us. So that's why we're trying to work on this, like what John's talking about.
Well, hopefully they can get the gears in motion, and we can get that because, from a forecaster point of view, I'm much used to being able to draw, and we all talk about it for the polygons for like a tornado warning, a flash flood warning, a severe thunderstorm warning. It just makes sense for me as a forecaster that I only want to warn a small area for where this dust is going, where it is, and where it's going towards. And I have experience doing that with the thunderstorms, so I can easily do it with dust storms. It just makes more sense to have like a convective dust storm warning. So hopefully they can get that all taken care of.
There's
one thing to add to this as well.
Go ahead,
What
Tony.
we have is another thing is we have 3 different types of dust storms that we do deal with. So I believe the large areas up here in northern Arizona where we'll get windy days in the springtime where we can have the interstate I-40 being the main one being shut down for hours on end. What we're talking about with monsoon season is, dust storms from thunderstorms and those dust panels that also impact the interstate as well. So there's kind of 3 different types that we're discussing, and that's kind of the other challenge too, kind of what Paul was hitting on. If you have an excessive heat warning and a dust storm warning for these thunderstorms, it takes about 5 minutes to get that out just because it's the same product, unfortunately. But nevertheless, that's kind of one thing that we deal with up here in northern Arizona are these more spring-type windy conditions, 70-mile-an-hour winds with widespread blowing dust, reducing visibility to even, tens of feet, if that.
And, Tony, you bring up a good point because it doesn't matter if it's during the springtime when you've got the strong synoptic winds that come cruising across Arizona or New Mexico, or if it's during the summer when a thunderstorm puts out an outflow boundary, the results are the same. You still have, big areas of blowing dust obscuring visibility and making it very difficult for drivers on the roads to see what they're doing. Hey, James, I got a question for you guys there in Southern California. How often do you guys deal with kind of convective blowing dust there?
Well, usually we're dealing with that in the case of monsoonal weather, usually coming from Imperial County. So we're looking at the Yuma area in the eastern part of Imperial County really closely for those outflow boundaries. And the larger events can actually go all the way into the Coachella Valley, Palm Springs area. So that's actually pretty common. And the largest, I'm not sure, but the largest actually go all the way into the Inland Empire in some cases.
Very good. I think Ken is joining us from Phoenix.
Ken.
I think we're getting a little feedback from him, so I'm going to keep him muted for just a minute to get him settled. I want to remind everyone, if you do have a question about dust storms and how you can protect yourself, feel free to tweet us a question using the hashtag Monsoon2016. So feel free to tweet us away. Hey, Lance, you're the aviation focal point. What are some of the threats that blowing dust pose to pilots? Maybe not necessarily so much for commercial, but to general aviation.
Restrictions of visibility, sudden restrictions to visibility, problems with engine ingesting the sand particles, the gypsum quartz, that's pretty hard material, pretty tough on the propeller, especially if it's for extended periods. If the aircraft are grounded, if they haven't taken off yet, if they're chalked, that could be a problem for the paint and things like that. But if you're airborne, definitely a sudden increase in turbulence, up and down motion, violent, severe to extreme turbulence, sudden onset of extreme to severe to extreme turbulence encountered by pilots upon landing or if they're flying. So, and these walls of dust, these dust storms can extend, as Tim had mentioned earlier, thousands of feet high. I think what was the one in Phoenix was at least over 5,000 feet high, I believe.
Well, I was going to ask Paul or anybody, how high up did these extend into the atmosphere?
They would typically, it depends, like I would say an average one is going to be about 3,000 or 4,000 feet. You get some big ones, and they're going to be 5,000 or 6,000 feet. I mean, that's definitely shutting down the airport when that happens. So, we try to time these as best we can with our aviation forecast. We can try to get it down to the nearest 5 minute. We will give heads up calls to the tower at the airport and let them know, so they'll see that, and they can be ready for that when it comes in. So there's not, they'll try to squeeze as many planes as they can right in before it comes, but they will shut down when that thing gets in there.
What kind of visibilities are we talking at the airport? Are we talking just right down to zero?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it can go down to zero. Not every. I'm gonna steal YouTube videos here. Basically, here's one I even found from the from the airport, but not every dust storm that comes in is going to give us zero visibility. Sometimes they come in, and the visibility is actually going to be a half mile or a mile, so it's not too bad. Some of them come in though, and the visibility goes down to 100 feet, and you just can't see across the street. So. Each one depends, and that's a real challenge for us. Is if you have visibility that's a half mile, that's honestly not a big deal. I mean, even if you're driving at highway speeds, a half mile is more than sufficient distance for you to see something in front of you and stop with enough traction. I know James and I dealt with this a lot when we were in Central California for fog. It's the same issue with the visibility, you can't see, but once you start getting down below a quarter mile, especially an eighth of a mile, that's not going to be enough distance for people to stop. So just like what Doug was talking about earlier, if you come up on traffic and the traffic's pulled off to the side but it's stopped, you're trying to follow it, you can easily run into them, the folks there.
And of course, a dust storm like that's going to impact the Phoenix is a hub, is it not? A big airport, so that's not only going to mess up flights going in and out of Phoenix, but that's going to mess up people trying to get connections and things like that. So it's a big deal.
Right. Yeah. So the good thing is when it comes in, the visibility goes down quick. You see it here, obviously, it comes in, and it doesn't take that long, but it'll start to improve relatively soon, so that the airport might be shut down for maybe 20 or 30 minutes, but then things will get going again. So and the timing of this. Each location is going to be different. The time of day that they usually come into the Phoenix area is going to be roughly between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. So if it's a little later, that's good. But usually that 5 to 8 o'clock window is when they have a big push coming in. I mean, that's when all the traffic's coming in and coming out. So they have, 70 planes landing and 70 planes taking off an hour during that time frame.
Wow. Wow. That's impressive. Hey, as we talk about things, I think, hey, Ken, are you on the call? Can you hear us? You're muted right now. You want to unmute?
I can hear you.
Okay, hey, Ken, I know that you've been doing work with dust sensors, right?
Yeah. We've got. Let me see if I can turn my camera on. It's not a very good setup here. Apologize for that, but yeah.
And I got your presentation up here too.
Okay, thank you. That'd be great. This all started about 3 years ago with there we go with one of these basically home brewed, and before I know it, I got a couple more out there, and then just this last year we've actually boosted up the network to about 8 sensors. So it's still very experimental, but it does show skill at detecting the dust. So the idea is it's keeping the cost very, very low, and then being able to use that to put more of them out there, and then actually create a network. Something that can be used possibly for a little bit of an early warning.
Very good. And hey Ken, I apologize. Can you introduce yourself to everybody? Because I didn't do that when you hopped in there.
I didn't catch that. What's that?
Can you just introduce yourself? You're at the Phoenix office, right?
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's Ken Waters. I'm with the National Weather Service in Phoenix, and I'm the warning coordination meteorologist, and I've been out here 8 years.
Very good. So what you've been working on are these dust sensors, and you've got them deployed around parts of around Phoenix and between Tucson and Phoenix. How many of these sensors do you have currently out?
We've the max number is 9, but we've had occasional problems with 1 or 2 of them. So if you look at the map that looks like Paul was just showing there, the black dots show when they're offline. So we're trying to clean that up. But for the most part, when they stay green like that, that means they're ready. They're basically taking an observation every 30 seconds.
And so, like you explained, there's a it's called a Raspberry Pi, but it's just a little cheap computer that you've got in there that detects when the visibility goes. Does it detect visibility or some kind of particulate air?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. Visibility in reality is actually a pretty expensive thing to try to sense. So it's in lieu of that, it's going out and actually measuring the particulate count, estimating the particulate, because that's what dust is. It's small little particles, and this little device there, that screen showing right now, that's the actual sensor there. Very inexpensive. It can be picked up for about $12, and the rest of the hardware is very cheap as well. So one entire sensor package is about $120. So it's really not very expensive, and so it's guessing kind of at the visibility. So it's looking at the density of dust and knowing that the more dust there is, the lower the visibility is going to be. So it basically uses that as a proxy.
And so so this is complete in real time, and explain how the people, the forecasters in the office in Phoenix would use this information.
Okay, yeah, the real main purpose of this was to be able to get some kind of notice out when we get these dust conditions, because they can come up very, very quickly, very suddenly. Anyone who's been on the highway has experienced that and gone through one of these. So basically, when it detects another condition, it sends an email to a limited number of responders, primarily the Department of Transportation and the Department of Public Safety, the state police folks. As well as the National Weather Service. Our part of it is we can use it as input, as potential input, to decide whether or not we need to be issuing a dust storm warning.
Very good, very good. Hey, I appreciate your work in that area. You've been doing great work, and I know that some of the academics in our area have been looking at all the work that you've been doing there. So hopefully we can expand on your project and move it out into southern New Mexico as well. Great work.
That'd be great.
I'm going to move on to another topic, John. I'm going to look to you. And I know that I'm sure that Paul and Ken were also involved. But I was wondering, John, and you're muted right now, if you could talk about the recent, we've had a couple years or several years, we've had a dust storm conference over in Arizona, and I know that you participated in that. So can you kind of talk about that? Who was that addressed to, and what were the things that were discussed there?
The one in Arizona is just impressive. Lots of agencies. Kudos to the Arizona offices, especially Phoenix and Tucson, for getting these things going with ADOT. I was very impressed. And New Mexico has really bought onto this. Lots of agencies in New Mexico are attending. And I presented there a year ago, and then I attended this last year, and I always pick up some new information. They focus on a lot more than highway safety. In fact, this year I thought I heard a little more emphasis on the health issues, which a lot of people don't think about. You want to be indoors when one of these haboobs moves by. It's easier to think about it in the springtime, where it takes hours for the dust to ramp up and it's lasting all day and covering a large area. But these sudden onsets of the convective dust storms need to be inside. We always knew that southern Arizona had valley fever. But we're finding out now, hey, it's also southern New Mexico, far west Texas, even down to the southern Rio Grande Valley. And so that's something we have to be thinking about. Things like that is what I pick up at these dust storm conferences, and they just keep getting better every year. And because of the ones in Arizona, we had one in New Mexico, southern New Mexico, Las Cruces, that was quite well attended, very well organized. But you know what? We used Ken Waters to come out to speak at that one as well, and I think we had someone from ADOT as well. So it's spreading, but we need it. It's a good workshop.
Hey, and I appreciate that's a great summary of the workshop. They're doing great work. But one thing you mentioned was the health issues, and we spent the last 15-20 minutes talking about the driving issues and the aviation issues related to dust. But I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about the health issues, because whether you may not be driving around and you may not be that big a concern, but hey, Paul, maybe you can talk on, because John briefly mentioned, what is valley fever and how is it related to dust storms?
Yeah, valley fever is a big problem in the Southwest. You can see on my screen here, I have a map that's showing. Here's the name for it. Koki, I can't remember it. I actually haven't went to they call it Coxie. Coxie is kind of the short term for it. I went to a workshop actually a few years ago when I was in California, because you can see in the Central Valley it's highly endemic in parts of the state there, including, so that's where like Bakersfield is, but also here for Phoenix and Tucson. So what it is, valley fever, it's caused by a fungus that lives in the environment. So here's a nice CDC page. If you could just Google valley fever, you'll find this information. It's not contagious. You can have symptoms that's like the flu, and a lot of people end up getting this. It's about, I believe the long-term statistic is if you live here long enough, it's about 1 in 3 people are going to get it. So you get flu-like symptoms. I actually got it a number of years ago when I was here in Phoenix as well, and it's the sickest I've ever been when I had it. The symptoms really range. And like how severe they are. Some people get it and they don't even know they had it, and other people you can die from it. I mean, there's very many documented cases of people dying from it. It's common here. You can see that the number of cases is increasing now. Whether or not that's because of better reporting or not. So anyone can get valley fever. That you just breathe. Breathing is how you get it, basically. So if you can avoid breathing in the dust and all the junk that comes with the dust storm, you're going to greatly reduce your risk of getting it. So it's kind of unfortunate. We see a lot of our media partners, they send their reporters out and they are going to be reporting from out in the dust storm. It's like, it's kind of a health hazard that you guys are taking right there too. I wouldn't want to be doing that myself. And let's see, the other thing that's kind of interesting, I always feel with the valley fever, is that dogs can actually get it as well. So, so another reason to bring your dog in if there's a dust storm coming.
It wasn't until a couple of years ago that like John mentioned, that I'd even heard of a valley fever. But as that map shows, and as John mentioned, it's actually a much more widespread issue across the Southwest, and definitely. The dust and the wind starts blowing that around. Anyone feel free to answer this next question. If you're at home and you see this big wall of dust coming towards you, what should you do? I mean, are we talking about I need to put up plastic bags around all my windows and put, wet towels under the doors? And what are reasonable precautions people should take to keep this from getting to them? John, Tony, anybody?
The big thing is just not being outside. I mean, that's going to drastically reduce it. I have never heard any of our health partners advising that you need to put on some kind of medical mask, or that you need to try to hermetically seal your house or anything like that. So, just taking some simple precautions, I think, are going to work. Just being in your car, in a building, most buildings, and like not sitting in your garage with the door open, very Midwest thing to do. But So just some basic stuff that most people, I think, do already.
I do know that, if I remember right, one thing that you can do inside your building, especially for inside your house, especially for people with the swamp coolers, is it might be a good idea to turn those off for a little while so that they're not drawing that outside air into the house.
Right.
And then, of course, if it's also 105 or 110 degrees, I don't know if that presents its own challenges. But
I do know that one challenge too that you hear a lot about is that doctors in the Southwest are relatively aware of this and they know to look for it. But that's not always the case. When I actually got it and I went to the hospital, I was first diagnosed with walking pneumonia, which is more like something that children get. So I actually had to go back, and after the first diagnosis didn't seem to be working, and then there they were able to diagnose it as valley fever. There are plenty of cases as well where people are visiting the Southwest and they pick up valley fever while they're here, and then they go back to wherever they're from. And most other places are not, the doctors there are not aware of valley fever, so they may get sick, go visit their doctor, and their doctor has no idea to even try to look for something like that.
Very true. You got anything to say, John?
Well, this is related to both health, is something that Paul touched on just now, and highway safety. But I was thinking about folks that are coming out to, let's say, Southern California, Disneyland, Universal Studios, all those attractions, SeaWorld near San Diego, but they're from, let's say, Mississippi or Georgia. They don't know anything about dust storms. One of the things that has been discussed at these workshops is finding ways, whether it be online or maybe at rest stops or restaurants or hotels or something, getting dust storm safety education out to those who don't know anything about it. And to a lesser extent, that could apply to folks that are, live along the California coast. And San Diego office, they may even be familiar with people that they're just beachgoers and stuff. Let's go look at the saguaros in Arizona. That would be a nice trip. And there they run into a dust storm. They don't know what to do. So education has to be more than the Southwest. It has to be over a large area.
For sure, and I think that's the challenge. And just like anything else in the weather, it's getting that message out and across the different channels. I appreciate ADOT's work with the pull aside and drive. What was it?
Stay alive.
Pull aside and stayalive.org or .com, I believe. Lots of good information there. And I think that's the importance that you stressed, John, of the conference, whether the conference was in Arizona or New Mexico, is that we get all the partners, everyone who's involved, from the meteorologist to the Department of Transportation people to the DPS people who are out in the field, getting us all on the same page and getting us all saying the same information and getting the same information out, because we all have different kind of groups that we can hit and different ways that we can work with getting our information out. And of course, our partners in the media do a great job in helping us get our message out. So it's a matter of getting us all together, all on the same page, and getting that consistent message out across the board.
And I will say that in MDOT, or New Mexico Department of Transportation, has really been following along with Arizona's example, and they have their own public safety campaign for advertising and media. Some of them are pretty witty, some of them are pretty effective, and so it's spreading, and that's good news. But we need it, like you said before, to the folks that have no clue what a dust storm is.
Sure. Hey, James, I got a question for you guys there.
Hey, where are you?
I'm just curious, do you guys ever, how often are they closing down roads or highways or things because the dust is coming across?
It's pretty rare to have the highway patrol there to respond. Larissa and I were going to share with you guys, we've been practicing the pronunciation. It's Coccidomycosis.
Coccidomycosis.
Can you Larissa taught it to me. Go ahead, Larissa.
Coccidomycosis.
That's right.
And
yeah.
Actually, one of the things we did want to really point out was, and someone had brought it up, is the
transport.
dispersal and transport.
Yeah, one thing that we've noticed, like I think John was mentioning about was San Diego. Some of the larger dust storms, you can actually have the transport hundreds of miles to regions even beyond San Diego, where people, are not, their systems are not at all tolerant to the I guess it's a fungal infection. I guess some of the larger events have traveled all the way up into Northern California, and people have gotten sick or even died. So, but that's pretty rare, but it evidently does happen.
Wow. There in Palm Springs, I know that of course that's a desert location. Do they have a lot of dust issues there, or is there enough vegetation to take care of things that they don't get?
That area around Palm Springs is really sensitive. The events, I would say, maybe once a year they get a big dust event. It's not as common as what you're seeing in southern Arizona and New Mexico, but I would say it's a bigger impact there because, number one, you've got people that are either visiting from all over different parts of the country, and even people that live there, of course. It's a big retirement community. And definitely a bigger impact just because people are not really prepared for those dust events. And as well as the infrastructure, we see a lot of tree damage and property damage when we get the rare windstorms and dust storms in the Coachella Valley.
Well, great. I appreciate that. Hey, Tony, can you kind of address the same issues? I know that up towards Flagstaff Way, you guys don't get a lot of, these dust storms, but you do get them on occasion. What are some of the challenges that you face, and what are some of the things that you need to do to help you get the word out?
Well, primarily, since we do deal with large-scale dust storms up here, especially over Navajo Nation, so we're talking our tribal partners in extreme parts of northeastern Arizona, just working with not only ADOT, but also Navajo Nation Department of Transportation as well, getting the word out as far as partnering with ADOT with the Pull Aside Stay Alive campaign. We're just really trying to get the message out to all of our partners out there that's a real threat, trying to get the word out, and essentially, just having more interaction with just a myriad of partners, really, and getting folks to really pull aside and stay alive, just get the foot off the brake.
Very true. Now, again, I want to remind everyone who's watching, feel free if you've got a question about dust storms or haboobs, you can tweet us a question at the hashtag Monsoon2016. Hey, John, can you, I think, because we're kind of wrapping things up here, but I was wondering, can you talk about the blowing dust incident that we had right outside of Lordsburg a couple of years ago that caused that tragic accident, the chain reaction accident?
I'll do that only if you let me ask Ken a question afterwards, after I'm finished, because I think the question I'm going to ask is something a lot of motorists along I-10 near the Arizona-New Mexico border are curious about. Okay? Now, thank you. Okay. The accident about, I guess it was about 6 miles or so east of the Arizona-New Mexico line on Interstate 10. It was from thunderstorm outflow causing, one of these dust storms, but the storm that caused it did not look that strong at all on radar. If you're a meteorologist looking at the radar, you're thinking, yeah, that's not that much of a storm. I don't even know if there's any lightning in that. But that's not necessary. All you need is a dry layer of air several thousand feet deep below, some rain falling that evaporates and cools the air, like you talked about yesterday, accelerates and it makes impact, and there's your dust storm. And it caused 7 fatalities. 3 vehicles, I think, were just totally wiped out, including, a semi, and it's just nasty, unfortunately. And it was just not that you need another wake-up call, but it was there it is, a wake-up call. And isn't it interesting that it's right next to one of those signs, dust storms may exist? Well, it certainly did on this day. Didn't last very long at all. As Paul had mentioned, sometimes these things don't last long at all, but it only takes a few seconds of near zero visibility when you're on the road for something like this to happen. So yeah, that's something that is going to be used as an example for a long, long time.
And before you get to your question about to Ken, I did want to point out, if you notice, at least the last tractor trailer there that's on fire that came in at the end, that tractor trailer is still in the traffic way. My guess is it may have started on the shoulder, but it worked its way back into the lane of traffic, and it's just not a good idea to drive into a blinding dust storm. It just doesn't work, and that's why we keep reiterating over and over again the importance of pulling as far over as you can, even off the shoulder to a point, and turning off all the lights, because you don't know what the people are doing behind you, and you all are trying to get through. If you don't drive into it, it's not as big a deal. But if you find yourself in it, get as far over as quickly as you can. Turn off your car, turn off the lights, so that someone coming along behind you doesn't think that that's where the road is and swerve in and just rear end you and cause you lots of problems. So it's just a tragic accident. So thanks for going over that. All right, go.
Okay, the question I have, and this was talked about at the workshops about agriculture land being abandoned, not much you can do about that, and releasing dust into the air with less windiness than you would expect, maybe only a 30-mile-per-hour wind, and that was happening this past spring. Interstate 10 was closed between Lordsburg and Wilcox many, many times, where the usual dust-prone areas were doing just fine. And it was a person who I guess, cleared away his field, lived in another state, and it was just a mess. My question is, and I know the Tucson office would be better to address this, but Ken or Paul, have you heard if that field is in better shape so that when a normal thunderstorm comes by, it's not going to be kicking up an intense dust storm so that we have to go on that really long detour if we're trying to go either way on Interstate 10?
And Ken, you're muted.
I'll try to get closer to the phone. To the mic. Can you hear me okay?
Just keep talking, Ken.
Okay, thanks. Sorry. Yeah, that's really an interesting case because I've been here 8 years, and I'm not familiar with any situation like that so extreme where one little plot of land was causing repeated dust storms. So it's unprecedented in the way that the state jumped into it, because they could see what the impact was. So initially they started by applying water to the field, and they quickly discovered that wasn't enough. So they actually went out to a contractor, and rather expensive, spent a good deal of money to put a chemical that's kind of designed to basically to stabilize that very top level of dust. And they went ahead and did that, and actually, once they finished it, I don't believe there's been any more instances where that one plot of land has caused a problem. So, not just one. I want to point out there are other problem areas that we know about. There's a classic one that's about halfway between Tucson and Phoenix that a lot of us are familiar with out in the Picacho area. And this one historically has been known to produce some just horrendous little, very small-scale dust storms. Horrendous in the sense that the impacts were huge. 60 to 100 cars and trucks involved in accidents, including some fatalities. So, bottom line is, this was a case where they identified the source, identified the problem, they went out and actually got technological solutions to it, basically applying this stuff that's its official name is called gorilla snot. I don't know where that name came from.
Right.
But basically, it actually is quite effective. It seems at least stabilizing the dust for a couple months.
Well, Ken, thanks for giving us an update on that. And I know that that's definitely been a challenge there because every time it seemed like we got just the slightest winds going during the springtime, we had a lot of they were closing down the interstate, and for right reasons. Hey, Tony, real quickly, I got a question in that relates to you on Twitter. Now let me call it up here real quick. How common are dust storms in northwestern New Mexico or northeastern Arizona? And it's from someone I'm thinking is in San Juan, New Mexico.
That's a very great question, and I just saw that pop up too. Basically, what we look at is about twice a year, and it's typically in the springtime too. So the kind of dust storms we've been talking about tonight with the monsoon season, that's not the kind of dust storms that we do get in northeastern Arizona and northwest New Mexico. It's more of the large-scale 5 to 6 hour type events where it's just really windy. We're talking wind speeds up to 70 miles an hour at times. That'll kick up all that dust, primarily over the Little Colorado River Valley and well into Navajo Nation. So I'd say about twice a year, if that. And but it is rare, but it does happen.
Very good. I appreciate you answering that. Well, it's just about the top of the hour. I'm going to have Paul go over the safety when it comes to dust storms one more time, and then we'll wrap up and see if anybody else has some final comments.
I had a question on Twitter.
Oh, ask away.
I asked the question on Twitter. Is haboob a valid term to use? You want us to tackle that with 2 minutes left?
No, I think that's fine. We can go a little bit. You know, this came up yesterday, and to give people a little background, once in a while when the term haboob comes up, it takes two problems. Some people find it an offensive term because it has that boob word in there, and other people don't like it because it's a very Arabic sounding word, and I know there's some sensitivities to that, but it's a very valid word. And matter of fact, while you're talking, I'm going to pull up a paper that I found just recently, or was sent to me actually yesterday. Go ahead.
I'm going to pull up a paper too.
Oh, well, then I'm sure it's the same paper.
Is it the same one from 1970?
71, yes, that's it.
Yeah, so here it is, 1972. Right at the top, an American haboob. So this was published in the, what was it? I think it was BAMS here, Bulletin of American Meteorological Society. Yes. So this is 1972, an American haboob. 3 authors on here. One of them was a meteorologist right here in the Phoenix National Weather Service office. So, I mean, and they even reference how this is a term that's been around. So, I mean, this is a paper that was published almost 45 years ago, and it was a valid term back then. And right. There are countless words in our English language that are borrowed from other root languages, whether it's Italian or German or Arabic, or, I mean, it's just, it doesn't make any sense, right? So, I mean, it's a perfectly fine word for us to use. We've had this discussion in several weather offices, I think. You know, we won't necessarily use the term, like we're not going to issue a haboob warning, because really the big reason is because not everyone knows what that is. Now, if we issue a dust storm warning, people can picture in their head storm, dust storm. I get it. I get what the hazard is. If you hear haboob, you're kind of like, what the heck is that? So we will not. But if someone's asking us in interviews with media or whatnot, there's no edict that comes from our meteorologist in charge or any of the managers that's saying you will not use this term. So it's not something that we will break out by ourselves. But if someone brings it up, yeah, fine, we'll use it.
You know, and then one of the I didn't get to fully explain because one of the problems was one of the weather offices over in West Texas, I believe it was the Lubbock office. They posted a picture on one of their social media channels that said haboob near Lubbock, I believe it was, and they immediately got a lot of pushback from people who basically said, well, in West Texas we call it a dust storm, and they took offense at the term. You know, like Paul said, It's a perfectly valid term, and if we're going to stick with just the English-based words, we're not going to be able to use the word hurricane, tornado, or monsoon for that matter. Monsoon is an Arabic-based word as well. So, just want to set kind of that to rest, that it is a perfectly valid term. It may not be as Paul mentioned, may not be as familiar to everybody, but it's definitely a term that has been used for quite a while in other parts of the world, and equally applies right here in the United States, especially in the Southwest. Well, it's right at 8 o'clock. Real quickly, I want to see if anybody wants to have any last words, and we will wrap things up. So, Tony, anything from beautiful northern Arizona?
Well, when we were talking about valley fever, it's kind of tough to think about valley fever at 7,000 feet. Looking at the CDC site, there are cases. So definitely want to be safe when it comes to dust storms, especially when you're driving. And like I said, just pull aside, stay alive, just what ADOT said.
Very good. Hey, Ken, do you have any last words real quick? You're muted. Can you unmute yourself there, Ken? No?
Oh.
He can't. He's trapped. It's okay. I'll let you see. It's right at the top of the screen. John, why don't you go ahead and give us your last word? Oh, there you are, Ken. Go. You had it.
Oh, there you are, Ken. You had it.
Now you're muted again.
I think what's happening is you're doing it, I'm doing it.
Okay.
Okay, I'm good. Okay, one thing to mention, smartphones, right? Almost everybody has one these days. One of the things that we do have with these is something called voice emergency alerts. They're very loud, even almost obnoxious alerts that they can come across on the smartphones. But one of the things that they are alert for are dust storm warnings. And I think this is huge because if I'm driving along an I-10 or one of the other highways and I suddenly get one of these alerts, this could save my life. This could tell me this is time to get off the road.
Hey, Ken, turn off your camera real quick and see if that improves your bandwidth.
Okay.
Okay, just keep talking now.
Okay.
Okay, just keep talking now.
Okay, that's a better picture of me anyway right now. Yeah, I was just going to make the point with the smartphones. There I am. I'm holding the smartphone up in front of the camera, and the camera's not on. Basically, almost everybody nowadays has a smartphone. And since about 2012, the National Weather Service started sending dust storm warnings out to the cell phones. And so I think this is a great thing because it's not like a no-weather radio. It follows you wherever you go. So if you're on the interstate and you suddenly get an alert, you want to take it seriously. It's a sign, an indication that you should probably think about pulling off the road. Don't put yourself in a situation where you could endanger yourself from the dust.
Very good. And we did talk about that, I think, right before you got on about how Ken sent out one of these WE alerts that are wider than areas, but we are working on narrowing that down.
Okay.
Very good. Hey, John, do you have any last words?
Hey, John, do you have any last words?
Boy, I'm hearing myself twice. Okay. I don't know if you can you see me? I can't tell. I can see Ken.
I can't tell. I can see Ken.
It's because he's Ken Waters and I'm John Paso. Anyways, what I like to say is we are affected with the National Weather Service as well. Lance Tripoli, who's there with Tim Bryce, drives frequently from Tucson from El Paso and has probably experienced this kind of thing more than most of us. So we have to pay attention to our own recommendations, our own safety rules, and I'm very pleased at all the input from the various weather offices we've had this evening.
Very good. And one last thing, James from sunny Southern California.
Thanks, Tim. I just wanted to say these hangouts have been a lot of fun. One thing we just wanted to mention, earlier we were talking about dissemination issues, and one tool we have at our disposal, although we can't do EAS activation, of course, but we do have the SWAs available, the significant weather alert, or I guess the significant weather advisory, but we can get those out very quickly, just like a short fused warning. So what we've talked about here is before it reaches more of a warning level, we can issue a significant weather alert, right away in 30 seconds, at least to get a heads up. As I think Tony mentioned earlier, the NPW can take quite a while sometimes to tweak. So that's something we're going to start doing here.
And until we get like a convective dust storm warning option, we'll just use the tools that are available to us, because as I tell the forecasters here, I said get the message out. We'll worry about the fallout on the product later. So we just want to get the information out to the public and let you all out in the public make the wise decision, whether it's you're at your house to go inside or whether you're driving around. You need to be informed so that you can make an informed decision. So I appreciate everyone joining me today. For my partner here, Lance, everyone did a great job. Do you have anything?
Just to mention, I spoke with the ADOT PIO, and I guess that they used the quote-unquote gorilla snot over just near Rodeo, where they had that recent. Well, they've had those recent dust events. I guess that was a trial run for them, from what I understand. What he told me a few weeks ago. So just a little bit of tidbit there, is what I heard.
Very good. Alrighty, so we've run well past the hour. I thank everyone who hung around with us past the time. Tomorrow will be our last hangout. Tomorrow we will be talking about heat, and I think everyone right across the bottom of the screen can agree that we'll be talking about it at the right time of the year, right time of the year. Forecast is going to work out, because we are going to be very, very hot as we head into the weekend. So I appreciate everyone joining me today. Thank you for your great conversation, and we will talk tomorrow.
Hey, Tim, did you get the questions? I saw a couple questions on Twitter.
Sure, go ahead, Ken. I thought we answered them.
No. They're on. There was a question from SBC San Juan. Says, how long can a dust storm stick around? And I guess we already talked about where the boom came from, right? North Africa.
Right.
But as far as how long can a dust storm stick around, it's the dust can linger sometimes for several hours over an area, but the worst conditions are going to be right when it first comes through. So I didn't mean to break up your closing there, but I just want to make sure you saw the tweet in there.
No problem. Thanks a lot. I always like getting the questions. So again, thanks for everyone for joining us today, and we will be back same time tomorrow, and we'll be talking about heat and how to protect yourself and keep your friends and family and pets safe from the heat, which will be great information as we head into a very hot weekend across the Southwest. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Have a great day.